All right, good evening, everybody. This is Rob Mazak. I am a psychic medium, and I normally do talks that align with metaphysical and spiritual topics and the craziness of all that. However, I am going to take a different spin tonight, and I want to talk about the most recent issues, especially the ones with Iran. Yes, everybody and their brother is talking about it. Everybody and their brother has different ideas, different opinions. Of course, what I'm going to talk about in this podcast are my opinions, and I don't have any way to prove anything I'm talking about. I am simply just going to talk about things from the view of my foxhole, as we say in the military, and some of the things I've researched, some of the things I've experienced, things other people say. Just put a bunch of puzzle pieces on the table and see if any of it makes sense to create a bigger picture. I don't know. Here we are on the but the aftermath of bombing of Iran at these so-called nuclear development sites. I don't remember the names, but they are out there if you want to see them or find them. And one of the things that's just really struck me about all of this is how history seems to repeat itself. And I used to think that that was just an old wives' tale and that it was just something that somebody said, mostly because I just didn't believe that. So I'm not really big into history and looking at history. It's just, I'm more of a forward-thinking person, so looking back at things is not my idea of a good time. However, we can learn a lot from looking back at times. And I learned that really cleverly in a college class I was taking, I don't know, a couple years back or so, where it was talking about the Columbus times, Columbus coming to America. And a lot of things that we are doing now are just repeats of things that were happening then. And it's just really struck me as odd and really hardcore, right between the eyes in a lot of ways, that we really are just recreating things over and over again, different countries, different places, different faces, but always the same idea. It's almost like we are just replaying a lot of different things like you might find in a video game where scenarios change, the players are the same, characters are the same in a lot of cases. The scenarios might change somewhat. It might be a different country, might be a different place, might be a different agenda, but always it ends in a particular way, and it restarts in many of the same types of ways. If you look back at history of the United States anyway, in the amount of wars that we have been involved in many ways probably have initiated, I don't know that for sure, but from the outside looking in, a lot of that looks very suspicious, if you ask me. And many things seem to start, many wars, many conflicts, many skirmishes, many battles seem to start with a lot of things that were not necessarily truthful to begin with, or false flags in a lot of ways. And false flag, if you don't know what that is, it's somebody does something and blames somebody else, and so that other person or entity that gets blamed is taking heat for it, and they didn't even do it, yet they're the ones that pay the price. And so if you look back at a lot of the history of the United States and conflicts using the Freedom of Information Act, which I guess it's like 25 years that you can get information on things, classified things are declassified after 25 years. And if you can get your hands on that, you would be very surprised, and it would be very enlightening to find some of the things that have actually happened that were not put out there truthfully to the public. I guess we're getting close to that 9/11 time frame too, isn't it? Really, I think about it. With the Freedom of Information Act, we should pretty soon be able to see some declassified documents, huh? Well, just a thought, throwing that out there. I learned that early on. It was probably about 8 or 9 years ago when I was listening to a video about someone who had gained some Freedom of Information Act documents, declassified stuff about Pearl Harbor. And it clearly laid out the fact that although the United States wasn't implicated in that as the instigator or the entity that started that, however, it was like they knew the attack was coming and they did nothing to stop it because they needed a reason to become part of that world war, which they weren't at the time. There's just so many things that just didn't add up. You got a whole battle group sitting in Pearl Harbor, all chained together. At least most of them were chained together on one side of the island, and all the senior people in those boats were on the other side of the island, away from where the attacks were going to happen or did happen. Anybody that has any military experience knows that you don't put all your assets together in one place because then you're an easy target, one shot, one done, you're out. And so you want to spread that out. In this case, it was very odd that they chained all of them together in Pearl Harbor. And boom, there you go. They allowed it to happen. There's so many documents out there, at least according to the guy that made the video, that shows that many of the people running the radars were reporting all the way up to the president even, I understand, that they were inbound and they just allowed it to happen. So did they make an arrangement with the Japanese? Who knows? Doesn't matter. I mean, you can go back and look at Vietnam, you can look at Iraq, you can look at Afghanistan. And it's like, why are we really there? I mean, we spent so many years, 10 years in each of Afghanistan and Iraq, and we still have bases there, right? Military bases, U.S. bases, I believe. Or at least they're all over the place, and they don't really tell you where they are. And we have bases all over the place. But, I mean, we went into Iraq because there was supposed to be weapons of mass destruction. Well, we went in there, started blowing stuff up and beating people up, and then they didn't find anything. Yet we stayed there for, 10 years? What were we really there for? I mean, there's a lot of out there landish ideas that there was some ancient alien technology and things like that were there, and that there was some kind of resources that the powers that be wanted to have. I say the powers that be, and I'll say they a lot, because I do believe that there are some really elite groups of people that really kind of direct the world and how it goes and manage what happens. You know, who knows why they do that or why they would do that. So the they is kind of something or some people that are in the corner in the dark. We know they're there. We know there's some kind of shadow governments, shadow powers. We all know that. We just don't necessarily have a finger on who that is. I mean, there's some ideas out there. So we'll just say they for the most part, because I couldn't necessarily claim I know who they are. I mean, I have ideas based on research and things like that, but that's not really the topic that we want to talk about. Here we are again, bombing Iran. And I look at this once again as a repeat. It's like we probably had this plan for a long time. Some of the things I've been noticing across social media lately is people replaying clips of many former presidents and presidents-elect or presidents-to-be that were running for presidents that all said the same thing that our current president said, that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. I mean, they talk about this for years and years and years. And, you know, I don't know who was really threatened. Because if you look at all the military bases in the Middle East, Iran is completely surrounded by U.S. military installations and bases and camps and all that. So I'm not sure who one is really threatened. Now, I'm not saying that the things that are going on in Iran are angelic and they're perfect and they're doing a really good job. I don't know that. There's a lot of talk about, you know, the regime being really, really horrible to the people, and there's things that say that they're not. So in our world today of artificial intelligence and technology, it is really hard to tell what's real and what's not. You know, did we really actually fly B-1 bombers over there, or B-2 bombers, whatever they are, over there under cover of night, you know, with escorts of F-35s and other types of aircraft to protect them on their way in? Oh, by the way, Iran didn't pick up on any of that. Didn't show up on any of their radar systems, nothing, right? Now, the stealth bombers, it kind of makes sense. They're designed for that. But the other ones may or may not be. I'm not a complete expert. I just have a hard time believing that the Iranian security or airspace security systems that they have didn't pick up on anything. It's almost like if that really did happen, that it was allowed to happen. We also gave Iran so much of a head start. So if for some reason those 3 sites that were bombed to obliteration, so to speak, at least that's been the reports, they were probably empty or mostly empty because they had time to move them. We've been talking about this for at least a couple weeks, I think, and we've been giving them oh, by the way, we're coming in. It was pretty obvious that we were going to join the fight. I'm not sure why, to be honest, why Israel started the bombing. Can't get a grasp on that. However, they did, and in many ways, I think they were like our proxy to get it started. And if you really look at the map of the Middle East, I know I'm kind of moving all over the place as I talk here, but I don't really do any scripts. I had to refresh my memory on the world map. And so I pulled up world map on the internet. The internet's a wonderful place. Sometimes you can find all kinds of things. Because I was kind of curious, that small state of Israel firing at the very, very large country of Iran. They must be crossing and flying these missiles over other countries. And I can't imagine those other countries wouldn't be concerned that these missiles are flying back and forth across their airspace. And there it was. Iraq is in between them. And there's a lot of other countries that are close by. Russia's not too far away. China's just east of Iran. And Afghanistan's right there. I mean, all these things are just hotbed of things ready to cook off. And so if they actually did bomb Iran, I'm not saying they did or they didn't. I'm just throwing it out there because I wasn't there. I don't know that. But if they did, and they basically bombed empty places because they had time to move them, and they are out in the desert. Fortunately, there's no real civilian populations out there, I guess. There's some deserted areas. All they would really be doing is just irritating the hell out of Iran. And guess what? I think we're going to end up with another pressure cooker, another long, drawn-out war that the United States probably is going to be drug into again. And if this thing really cooks off well, by the way, we have a bunch of new NATO countries because of the Russia and Ukraine war, like Finland and all of those, and Sweden, and I think. But anyway, there's several of them that have joined NATO now and have been allowed to come in. So we are going to end up with this conglomerate of war. War is a terrible thing, I can tell you. It is no glory in war. I worked in the burn center, the Army Burn Center, for 10 years and took care of a lot of people blown to smithereens in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the other places. And it is definitely no glory in watching somebody suffer and many of them dying and their family members being torn apart and families being torn apart and everything. It is really no glory in it. But, unfortunately, war is business. I mean, when I guess the economy starts to slump, what's the best way to churn the economy? It's, hey, let's have a war. So I don't know what the real purposes are behind what is going on. But I can tell you, if you really look at history, especially military history, you will find a lot of patterns. One of the things of note that I've noticed over all the years, so I first joined in 1982, a long time ago. If you watch the ebb and flow of conflicts in timelines and the growing and the shrinking of the forces, it's just like this crazy pattern that you can draw out. I don't have a real detailed analytical mind, so it's difficult for me to wrap my head around that and put all those eaches together and have all these graphs and charts and dots and matrices and all that, but it's there. I'm sure somebody has done it. But if you really look at that, you will discover that, there is probably a plan and there's a cycle behind this plan. Who's behind this plan? The they, I guess. They are, which we talked about who the they is. In my opinion, a lot of it's planned out and it's on purpose and it's for reasons. It could be for resources, it could be for power, it could be for all kinds of reasons, right? after the 9/11 attacks, right? There's another one of those that you really should dig into. Well, we were not going to talk about all that. That would take a very long time. There was a former general that stated he was handed a document from another general, and he didn't want to name this general because it was supposed to be classified. This document held a plan, or showed a plan, that there was, over the next 5 years, I think, from then, they were going to cycle through many Middle Eastern countries, starting with, I think it was Iraq, Afghanistan, and Sudan, and Libya, and Syria, and then finishing out with Iran. Well, it's way beyond 5 years. Perhaps Iran was still in the plan. I'm not sure who decided that the United States was going to be the policing agency for the world, but here we are. And very few other countries have bases that operate out of other foreign countries, foreign to them. We are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. I mean, we probably have a military base in every country just about, if not more than one. You wonder sometimes, in the grand scheme, the grand plan, if there is a direction towards a new world order, which many presidents have talked about, many high-end leaders have talked about, that they want a one world government. You know, what better way to create a world army that could impose the desires of a one world government better than allowing the United States military to fortify itself all over the place? And whether the United States would be part of that policing force or others would be mixed in, who knows? But we are developing bases all over the place and an army of sorts. And if you look at the homeland of the United States recently, we've had our own problems, civil disturbance all over the place. What is happening, as you saw, if you watch the news at all, is in LA, Los Angeles, they called out federal troops, activated federal troops to go in and take over and create order. And I guess that worked. And they didn't ask the governor. They didn't, the feds did not request permission. They just marched them on in there and had their way with it. And so that created many, many protests across the country. And Texas here was definitely part of that. Of course, we didn't have nearly the craziness that LA did. However, but what's happening is it's morphing into more active federal components being brought in to help with ICE and law enforcement and down on the border as well. I mean, it's happening all over the place. And most of us, at least in America, are okay with that because, we got very tired of allowing all the illegal aliens in. They just marched on in. I have lots of experience with that. I could talk about that. I've seen it happen. It was happening. Apparently it's not happening as much anymore under our new administration. That has been changed quite a bit. However, we have grown fond of allowing our military to enforce federal laws, state laws. Yes, there's policing agencies out there, so many that we probably can't even keep track of how many there are. However, we are kind of moving into what I would say is more of a military state, or militarizing a lot of different things. And the military, it kind of starts and stops at the top. The President of the United States is the commander-in-chief of all the military services. The states supposedly have their own commanders. However, all the National Guard, I don't know about the Air Guard, but I know the National Guard can be federalized by the president. I don't know if there's any real end in sight for militarization and war and all these kind of things. And I can tell you there's a lot of people that are really getting kind of nervous, and they are really worried about, World War III. Well, by the definition of a world war, we have been in World War III for a very long time. If you go all the way back to Iraq, back in 2003, we've been in a world war. I mean, it's just no way around it. And most world wars were not named until after they were completed, after the wars were semi-ended and peace came about. And once again, we also cycle from peaceful times to times of war. and back and forth and back and forth. But we have been in World War III. So I don't know why people are talking about this being, it's coming, it's coming. Well, it's been here. Pretty soon it's going to knock on your door. It's going to knock on my door. It's going to knock on all of our doors. And we are in for a very interesting set of years here in our near future that are going to change and disrupt our lives greatly. And yes, those of us in the United States seem far removed from much of this. However, let's just face it, we are a very small world now. There's a lot of other countries, other places, other people, other entities that can easily reach out and touch us. It's not like it was back in World War I, World War II days. Much different times. On the same note, why would any country want to take out the United States honestly? Because we definitely are funding the world. We are shoveling money all over the place. We are probably funding both sides of the wars. I mean, if you dig into history, you'll probably find that's true. I don't know if it's true, but there's a lot of information flow out there that would suggest that. With Doge coming on, yes, there was some underlying things figured out and where all the money was going, but I don't think it's all been found. And I think that much of the money we create, I wouldn't say print because printing is not necessarily a thing anymore, but the money that we create goes to a lot of different places for a lot of different reasons. Much of the information, research, and data that's out there would suggest that we fund a lot of the terrorist organizations, and they're only terrorists when they're not fitting the agenda anymore. Sometimes they're the good guys, and sometimes they're the bad guys. And I do believe that a lot of that happens, but once again, I don't know that for sure. I just know that I've heard some firsthand testimony from some special ops people, soldiers, airmen that have been over there that have told me some things that just kind of shocked me originally, and that's where I really became more of an alternative news guy, somebody that looks at things a little different. It's easy if you think about it. If you're on the rooftop with your weapon in the sights of, or you have Osama bin Laden in the sights of your weapon rather, and request permission to fire and you're denied, why would that be? And that was one of the first things I heard. I don't know how true that is, but I heard it. I was told that, and I was like, why? And this person who told me says, well, it's pretty simple. No Osama bin Laden, no more war. Once again, here we are. So as you can tell, many of the things I'm talking about, I don't have proof for, and I'm not trying to prove them. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I just think people need to really take a closer look at things and analyze them and be careful what you believe in. Because if you look at artificial intelligence, I could go and find artificial intelligence to create videos and characters and everything that look exactly like a real thing, like very, very real. And it's so hard to tell the difference that, what you're seeing on TV is actually bombs going out. Is it fireworks? Is it AI generated? If you go back even in the, I don't remember when it was made. I think it was early 1980s or late 1970s. A movie called Wag the Dog. It might have been later than that. I don't know. I just remember it was before a lot of high-end technology. And it was just a movie. What happened in the movie was the president was failing in popularity, so he needed war. Something that would make him more of a hero. And so they went into the studio and they created an entire war out of a studio. There was never a shot fired. There was never a bomb sent down range. There was nothing like that ever happened. It was all done in a movie set or on a movie set. So why wouldn't they be able to do that now with the technology we have? I mean, trust me. I mean, you can look on the internet and find videos of people, news people, or people reporting news that are not real at all. It's all AI generated. And it's absolutely crazy. I mean, I could probably find AI once again to recreate me, make a video of me saying things, and it's really not me at all. think we got to be careful what we believe in. Can we really do anything about all of this? Probably not. But we can certainly be responsible for how we react. Emotionally, it's probably hard to see and hard to wrap our hearts and our minds around what possibly is really happening out there. I pray that what we're seeing is just fiction and that we're really not doing that, dropping 30-ton bombs on another country. That would be crazy to think. We might have. I don't know. I have not seen any footage of any of that. I don't know if they're going to release that or not. But even then, would you believe it? I don't know. What I would like to finish up with is just being really cautious, people, and in understanding that there is some type of plan behind the scenes. There always is. And for what reasons, we could debate that all day long. But if you really dig into things and look at other sides and talk to people that have been there, done that, and find credible sources, you will probably discover that most of the things that you see portrayed across the internet, your television sets, your computer screens, are very untrue or created and faked and made up. Once again, just be cautious out there and really do your homework before you allow your perceptions to create a new truth for you. And the next thing you know, you're wrapped up in it just like everybody else. Once again, all of this stuff that I'm talking about could be straight up and not created through false flags or through AI. And I mean, it could all be very factual and actual. I don't know. It just seems very suspicious to me. And I think these days it's a lot more copacetic, a lot easier to speak out on the alternative side of things. People are doing it all the time, sometimes too much. Here I am doing it again, right? And I apologize if I'm ranting and going all over the place, but I just want all of us to be mindful of our surroundings and just be careful what you decide to believe in. Knowing the news, checking out the news, knowing what's going on around you is not a bad idea. But just be careful you're not hooked into it and become a believer in something that who knows if it's true. Because unless you were there, saw it, witnessed it, was part of the event, you don't really know. So there's a lot of people out there on the internet, social media, all kinds of social media platforms that are talking about things that they don't have any way to prove. They're just ideas, just like the ideas I'm putting forth. All right, guys, be safe out there, stay strong, and live your life.